Someone said I should make an introduction clip for the channel to look more professional. To me, it looks dorky. And how would that be? Like, hello, hello. I have a better idea than that. Some people go directly and buy software, seeing this shameless ad on Nikon Rumors that says 400% upscale. You know what 400% upscale is? You just double each side. So if it's a 5x10 image, you make it a 10x20. You double each side and you get a 400% upscale. So it's not a big deal. Any software can do that. If the image is sharp from the beginning, to begin with, your image is sharp, then you can do image size, let's say 70 inches, all the way up to the ceiling, 70 by 46 with bicubic smoother. Trust me, it works better for these enlargements. And sometimes it's actually gonna be maybe even too sharp. This is now 70 inches height, the image. At 300 ppi, which you do not need for large images. So, 650% upscaling, because the original was 495 square inches. The final is 3,220 square inches. Without artifacts, without sharpening, without noise reduction, and without unpredictable AI. I emphasize without sharpening and without noise reduction. As a matter of fact, I end up with an image that is way too sharp to print that big. So you do not need additional software, and don't get caught by marketing tricks like 400% up. The number itself, the way they present it, is a marketing trick. But do you actually need the 300 ppi? That's another thing, because you may not need upscaling at all. Specifically, if you go to the original image size is 18 by 27, it says here, but at 300 ppi. Forget this resample thing, because for large prints, 200 ppi is enough. You want 220, 220. And if you go to 220 resolution, which normal people cannot distinguish, I mean, professional photographers could not distinguish between 150 and 300. In the video that I have shown many times by a professional printing lab. And professional photographers in a blind test could not distinguish between 150 and 300. So let's say you want 220, you have a native size of 25 by 37, which is big. The large posters that they sell, and people put a large poster in the room, is 24 by 36. So be careful of the marketing tricks that they use, which, I mean, all right, probably it may be a good software for crappy images, but still you get an unnatural look. And the more you examine the resulting image, the more you say, this doesn't really look very natural. It doesn't even look organic matter, the way it is, right? You gotta check it out yourself. I gotta say though, that if you're dealing with high ISO images frequently, the Topaz denoise, do they call it denoise, something like that? If you use it at the minimal settings, don't overdo it. It's very good, actually. It's very good. It's something that Adobe should go. It goes a little further than Adobe. So you only need the minimal settings, because above the minimal settings it starts looking unnatural. The skin tones look like you're photographing a mannequin. like a plastic face and stuff like that. But at minimal settings, it works pretty well. This is an image that is not well executed. There is haze in the atmosphere, and it's a long shot, 135. It is out of focus, even by a little bit, and you'll see what this little bit does. And it's ISO 31, and if there's one thing, never shoot ISO 31 when you have bright skies. Shoot anything else you want with ISO 31 except bright skies. First of all, let's make it less hazy. I'm gonna start, first of all, reducing the tint because it's way too much and it turns the image into this purplish kind of thing. Most people will go for the dehaze slider, but this screws up the colors, especially the blue. So this is what I'm gonna do according to Adobe actually. So this is almost official, I would say. Hold the shift key pressed. The shift key, hold it pressed. And double click on the whites and double click on the blacks. So now you have an image which is the full dynamic range and nothing is clipping. Now this is not, this image is from black to white all the way, full dynamic range. This is not very good for prints the way it is like that because of the strong contrast. So let's say you reduce them a little bit, right, to bring it just before it starts getting hazy. And now we're going to open it in Photoshop to upscale it. Now the image does have problems from the outset. As I said, the focus was not good, aperture was not good, whatever. So on the sides, you have unjustified blurriness. In the middle, it's just decent, I would say. I don't even know where the focus point landed, but it's just decent. The first method we're going to upscale it with is Bicubic Smoother, and we're going to double its size. Okay, so that's a 400%, as the ad of that guy says. All right, with Bicubic Smoother enlargement. So this is it, the Bicubic Smoother. And as you can see, it's an enlargement. Things do not appear very sharp, I would say. But you do not see any aliens in the picture, right? You do not see any extraterrestrials. You do not see something that is unnatural. You just see a little bit of, let's say, natural photographic blur, so to speak. So let's save this thing. Actually, it's too big. I'm just gonna save the screenshot, which is good for our purposes over here, right? And you'll see why. I'm just gonna save this part. So blah blah did the same upscaling with preserved details. Preserved details is on the right, Bicubic Smoother is on the left. And most people are gonna be drawn to the image on the right because it looks more contrasty. And contrast is very attractive. It looks sharper until they start paying attention to details. And they see, for example, that the flagpole on the right looks like it's ghosting from both sides. On the left, it looks like a normal flagpole, which is blurry because of the distance of the lens, whatever. The flag itself, on the left, it looks like a normal blurry flag. On the right, it looks like a creature from hell. The trees on the left, they look like blurry trees from afar. On the right, it looks like somebody threw paint or mud, green mud, green patches of mud all over the place. Doesn't it look like that? Like boiled spinach or something, which is muddy and wet and everything. This part of the wall, look at this. Over here, it looks like normal, blurry from afar. Over here, it looks like it has eczema. And the patches, contrasty sharp patches right next to completely blurred out areas, like somebody threw mud over here. But people are gonna buy something that sharpens things. Why? Because monitors are mesmerizing devices. It's the nature of the medium. Of course, until you print it, and you realize it looks like complete crap when you print it. Conclusions of this video. Number one, if you're planning to upscale, consider also not upscaling just by reducing the resolution, pixels per inch. 220 has no difference from 300 even with a strong magnifying glass. You're not gonna find it. If you still insist on upscaling at high resolution, for whatever reason, do your best in the image execution so that you won't have to spend money and time afterwards trying to save an image that is poorly executed. And I'm talking about real upscaling now, right? I'm not talking about, oh, I printed a 18 by 25 for my wall. The iPhone can do that. Number three, don't buy shit. It's time to reduce expenses. Really, and you know why. On all fronts. For the first time in many years, I paid attention to bills, monthly bills that were not as big, but they all pile up. And I even returned the rental modem of Comcast to Comcast and bought my own modem, and they activated it for me. From $285, I now pay $93, and I got the same services. That's almost $2,000 a year. Well, it's not going to make you rich, but you're going to have less stress. I have a feeling that the most disappointed amateur photographers are those who have lots of equipment and they buy one set after the other, but no fulfilling images, prints, and albums. Now, I was actually surprised with the volume of orders for the Z9. Now, of course, Matt Granger says that I need it because when the dancers dance and this and that. But this guy here, HK Visuals, he was shooting dancers with Canon, I think, and then with a Fuji, medium format, slow camera, right? I never felt that he was missing something. I've seen his videos. The pictures are amazing and perfect moment. So you can put a little effort. It's not like digging the new Panama Canal. You just put a little effort in capturing the moment. And as far as dancers are concerned, as a matter of fact, dancers are trained to hold positions. Or you can get a camera that shoots like 50 images a second and then review 30,000 images to find supposedly the perfect one. And it's not like the Z9 is not worth its money. It is worth its money. It's a super camera. But for most people, it's going to be like buying a Ferrari to go grocery shopping every Saturday. Well, you don't buy a Ferrari, period.
You didn't want the honor of having to own a Ferrari.
Yeah, it's like rich guys that go to dominatrix. Oh, she kicked the crap out of me. It was fantastic. That's great. I mean, some guys like that.
Similar to Leica, right? The camera you get and it cures gas because you don't have any money to get anything else. But Kai, the Chinese reviewer, I remember his review on the Sony A7R4, and some of the images were shaken even on a tripod, if the tripod was cheap, because of the very tight pixel pitch. And now Leica issued a 60 megapixel full frame camera, unstabilized. Rangefinder focus. At 45 megapixels at f4, this is what happens when you miss focus by 3 inches. Or is it 2 probably? And this is what happens when you get it in.
That's the one I take out every day. It's a family, we are a family.
I would buy a Leica just to meet this guy in the background, take portraits of him, and sell the book on Amazon. Atayer Kunha, we had a long back and forth of emails last week to get him to photograph the embossed bokeh of the Zeiss 85 1.4 planner, specifically this phenomenon in the off-focus areas where certain shapes appear as if they jump off the surface, creating this dimensional bokeh. This happens though in certain distances and all the way to f2, maybe 2.2 under certain circumstances. So he managed to get it very close. As a matter of fact, the 9 over here that looks like a donut. This is the best configuration that I had found for the embossed bokeh effect of the 85 planar. Now, out in nature, it can create an interesting bokeh. Some people like it, some people don't. It's still unique for this lens. On the next video, I'm going to do a test on whether the D850 can write in the exe file aperture changes of a fully manual lens, non-chipped, just by setting it in the non-CPU lens menu. Because I might have been wrong all along. I don't know. Nobody's really interested about this because nobody's setting them up. How do you remember which one is which, right? But I'm curious now. I might have been wrong all along. Here we have a problem. Thomas Erickson says photography is not fun, it's pain, hard work, you're never satisfied with the results. That's exactly what's part of the fun of it, that you're never satisfied with the results. But you sound very depressed, my friend. And I'm far away. The only thing that I can give you is a charming smile from Nancy. No, not this Nancy. The other one, please. I gotta stop this K-pop nonsense or I'm going to end up reviewing Rotolite. And in the next video I'm also going to have overpowering the sun with speedlights. Because overpowering the sun is not this. It's not just taking pictures and feeling flash on a sunny day. Overpowering the sun is this, when you have the sun in the frame, hitting you straight. And that's the RAW file, by the way, and that's F16. So I'm going to talk about the limitations and why I sold the Godox AD200 and prefer to stay with the Nikon speedlights. Thanks a lot, bye.